What's going on, everyone? Scott here. Welcome back to the channel. So Survivor Season 48, Episode 7. We are now officially at the merge after last week's episode. Now, last week we saw Charity go home. Mitch was left out of the vote, which is kind of a big question I have coming into this episode. Obviously, how he will feel being left out of this and kind of where the pieces fall after that going into this week. Another tribal council with votes thrown at Say. Pretty much at every tribal council she's been through, I think she's got votes thrown her way. Her throwing a vote at Cedric, is there any fallout from that as well? But something's got to give eventually between these two, right? But anyway, before we jump in, if you could, just hit that like and subscribe button down there. We have more Survivor content on the channel and will throughout the rest of the season, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a video. So jumping in, back at camp, Mitch thought it was going to be 12-1 for Say, but now someone he played this game very close with in Charity is out of the game. Kyle tells Mitch that he did vote for Charity because people said that she was saying his name. So Mitch didn't want to write down Say's name, but felt that he had to. Mitch tells Camilla that he wouldn't have blown up his game to not write Charity's name down. But Say tells Mitch that, she's a cat with 9 lives, keeps coming back and keeps getting out of having her name written down at tribal council. But she doesn't believe Mitch when he was saying that he didn't want to write her name down and tried to get the vote away from her. But Cedric is trying to figure out where that stray vote came from, and Say purposefully wrote in cursive, not in her handwriting that everyone would know, his name, so no one would know who threw that vote on Cedric. But like she said, I had to get my lick back on him, and I thought that was pretty funny and a cool early moment in this episode. But the next morning, Mitch is struggling a little bit with, being blindsided last night, which he said he knew he would struggle with coming into this game. Shaheen tells him that, her name was on the block, he knew her name was on the block in Charity, but was told not to tell Mitch because, they were so close in this game. Mitch starts sharing more with people and opening up a little bit more, getting back into the game, if you will, and talks about how he took a big pay cut to leave from being a mailman to go teach because he didn't feel like he was doing enough with his story. And thought that was a cool moment seeing Mitch open up like that. It's always cool seeing the survivors open up about, real world stuff in their life outside of this game. But Joe says that, hey, if we keep Mitch around, he can win this game. I mean, he's good in challenges. He's likable by everyone. He has good relationships with people. He's a dangerous player in this game coming down the home stretch of this game. And Say's trying to communicate with people that, she didn't really have connections with so far. Talks with Shaheen. They have a combo, and she doesn't take it personally when Shaheen was like, I wrote your name down last night, right? And Shaheen thinks that if they started the game on the same tribe, that feels like they could have worked together. But at the end of the day, Say is very dangerous. As Shaheen says, Say, Cedric, and Mitch have all now talked to Shaheen, which are, from the outside looking in, the 3 on the bottom. So now Shaheen, as he says, the 3 people on the bottom talk to me. So he believes that, any move would have to be made, any move that would have to be made in this game would have to involve him. Feels like he's in a good spot. If he can keep control, then he can win this game. Jump right into the immunity challenge fairly early. Going to be divided into 2 groups of 6, 2 immunity necklaces, 2 tribal councils, 2 people going home. And then the person that lasts the longest earns a PB&J do-it-yourself food reward and gets the opportunity to go to tribal council second, which is big because the first tribal council, whoever is voted out, will not make the jury, will come up 1 vote out short. So the groups are Star, Joe, Mitch, Chrissy, Eva, and Say, and then Kyle, Shaheen, Cedric, Camilla, David, and Mary. Comes down to Eva versus Joe on one side, Kyle versus David on the other. Smack talk galore, Shaheen singing the background music for the show. Eva starts to drop, but Joe is trying to tell her, don't quit now. Even though they're competing against each other, still, they were all really competing, they were, yes, all competing against each other, but, Joe encouraging Eva, and they were all kind of holding there. You heard that throughout the 4 of them while they were competing. It was really cool to see, a really cool challenge. But Eva does drop, so Joe wins immunity for that group. So now we're fighting for food. Kyle drops, so now David has the individual immunity on that side, and then it's the battle. Joe versus David for who gets the food reward and who goes to tribal council second, and set a new record for longest anyone has lasted at this challenge. Mad respect between them, new record, but David ends up winning it. So his group gets the PB&J reward and goes to tribal council second, which is now key because now the person that goes home from the other group, as we said, will not make the jury. And really cool how Joe, talked about how he was just thinking about his kids, kind of fighting through that, getting through that. He was using that as motivation to get through that challenge. Mad respect to all of them up there competing in that. Now back at the reward group portion, David really only wants to see Cedric goes home. David feels like he's in a really good spot right now in this game. Mary says that she thinks it's going to be Say going home on the other side and not making the jury. Cedric is worried about his position with the group, but as we know, it's never as easy as that though. Kyle says Shaheen is a part of the majority voting group that has been voting with, but doesn't trust him because Shaheen is one of the ones that went through his bag and lied about it to his face. Over at the other group, Joe is really understand that this vote is very important to think about who do we not want on the jury, because now their group, as we've said now a couple of times, whoever's voted out of that group will not be on the jury, so they won't have a say in who wins this game at the end of this thing. So really important who goes home from this group for people's games. But knows Mitch and Say are on the outs of this group, but Say talks with Joe like, hey, we haven't talked strategy, but want to talk? Say is working the room to try to get through another vote. She tells Eva that she's going to vote for Mitch. However, there is Mitch's block a vote out there that have to account for. Eva, Chrissy, and Mitch mention Say going home as well. Over at the other tribe, Shaheen, David, and Mary agree Cedric is unfortunately the move, but want to pitch Shaheen. Shaheen doesn't like being used as a smokescreen, but this kind of opens the door for possibly another move to be made. Shaheen is the decoy vote, as Kyle says, but this is an opportunity, as he tells Cedric. Kyle and Camilla talk about a plan. Well, first off, they still can't believe that they made it here, kind of undercover with how close they are and the alliance that they have, like them two, getting through the beginning of this game and to this point. But they try to brainstorm something to get David to believe that Shaheen did something to threaten their game to justify voting him out tonight. Camilla tells David that she thinks Shaheen has the idol. Spins a good story about him having an idol and, possibly wanting to make a big move. And about how when everyone was looking for the idol, he kind of stayed back at camp. Spun the story pretty well, but David does see the concern with Shaheen being a smart player and possibly wanting to make a move. But Cedric will do anything to be a number right now, obviously, given the tribe dynamics and the numbers with where people have been throughout this game. So both are dangerous at this point. And over at the other beach, Mitch is kind of all over the place. Chrissy says even though she doesn't trust Say, but she's been thinking Mitch because she said that he's scaring him because he's, good at challenges and, thinks the game's kind of maybe getting to him a little mentally. He's the only one, I believe, that hasn't, I believe that Mitch said that he's the only one that hasn't been on a food reward yet. And then obviously, getting blindsided just at the last tribal council. So she thinks that could be getting to him a little bit, but Chrissy and Star discuss Mitch as an option. Say and Chrissy talk about Mitch as well. Say feels a little more confident because Chrissy did vote for who she said she would vote the last couple times. But however, Chrissy doesn't trust Say, so still got to think if it's the right thing to do and who to put on the jury. Joe and Mitch talk, and Mitch was thinking about playing his block a vote against Say so she can't use her shot in the dark, and Mitch wants to continue to work with Joe going down the line in this game in the future. But smartest gameplay move is Mitch, Joe says. Is that what will happen? We'll find out. But over at the other camp, David tells Cedric he thinks Shaheen is the smartest move. Shaheen hoping to cash in on some trust tonight with Kyle, Camilla, and David. So as we're heading into tribal council, it seems like the smart moves from each side. It seems like smart move is for Mitch for the first group that'll be coming in. Smart move for the second group, consensus for them, is Shaheen going home. Is the smart move what will happen? Let's see. At the first tribal council, Chrissy says she doesn't know why we're, talking about being loyal and honest when at some point you got to start making moves. But make sure that not necessarily tonight. Like, Down the line, maybe, but not tonight. But Mitch uses his block a vote on Say, and all the votes are for Say. She goes home one spot away from the jury, unfortunately. And about Say, I mean, she's had an up and down game. Definitely had her name wrote down a lot of times. I would love to see her back for a second chance and hopefully get off to a better start to put herself in a better position in this game. I don't think her going out at this point was necessarily all her fault. She wasn't put in the best situation in terms of tribe dynamics and everything that happened. So I would love to see Say out here for a second chance. But the next group comes in. Obviously now whoever is voted out is going to be on the jury. Shaheen says now is more about shoring up alliances as we move forward in this game. Kyle says that this is about wanting to cement something more solid going forward. Then Shaheen adds, what's smoke and mirrors and what's just a mirror? Where's the smoke and are you the target when the smoke clears? As they vote, they end up going with Cedric 5-1. So Cedric is the first member of the jury. So they go in to tribal council, each groups with, hey, this is the smart move. Two people being the smart move. They don't go with what they categorized as the smart move. Could be not wanting to ruffle feathers with the larger majority group, or just go like, hey, let's just get the easy vote, reconvene, and we can do these moves another day that we talked about. But next week looks like David is losing his mind, could be causing a rift in the group here. Chrissy says to go for Joe. David trying to flip it to Camilla, maybe. But looks like the main alliance could be turning on each other, so definitely should be in for an interesting episode next week. But anyway, that'll do it for this one. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.